After a trip, Joan's husband arrives at a country club. Since he was away from New York for a few days, he is unaware of what is happening. He gets a call from Neva, the nanny for his kids, telling him that she has them because Joan is terribly ill and that he needs to pick his kids up. However, as he is exhausted from the trip, he chooses to go home instead and pick the kids up the next morning. When he gets home, he discovers that his neighbors have changed into bloodthirsty vampires and that his area is deserted. Somehow, he escapes and locks himself inside his home. Unfortunately, he meets his vampire wife, who immediately attacks him and sucks his blood. Inside Satrakian's house basement, Satrakian mentions to Ephraim and Nora that silver harms the vampires. When Satrakian was a kid, he was told by his grandmother that the vampires are susceptible to silver as it burns them. Meanwhile, Ephraim interrupts Satrakian and suggests to publish the video of Ansel as a proof among the public rather than killing the infected one by one, which is next to impossible. However, Satrakian suggests that they kill the leader of those vampires, the master, so that the spawns will die eventually. Ephraim discusses the plan, saying it's illogical, but Satrakian assures that it works only that way because he has experienced it before. Satrakian then points out that everything he has said has proven to be correct, and in order to defeat the evil, he asks Ephraim to trust him and follow him accordingly. Following this, they make a plan to reach the master by locating his human servants, the vampires. In a flashback set in 1944 Poland, it is revealed that Eichorst discovered Satrakian to be a skilled craftsman when he was still in the concentration camp. Therefore, Eichorst assigned him the sole task of creating a coffin. Back then, Eichorst was still a human, but he was already monstrous in his behavior. While working on the coffin, Satrakian and Eichorst have a conversation about life, war, humanity, and success. Eichorst proposes that once the Third Reich falls, another Reich with great power will emerge from the ashes to create a new world. Also, Eichorst believes that mankind has a yearning to be subjugated. After Satrakian completes carving the coffin, Eichorst is extremely impressed by his craftsmanship skills and praises him. Back in the present, Gus is locked up in a jail with his friend, Felix, who is already infected by the vampire sting. Although Gus tries to convince the cops about the chaos in the city, the cops refuse to believe him. At Jim's house, he packs up to leave for Palo Alto with his wife, Sylvia. In the meantime, Ephraim, Nora, and Satrakian arrive there. Even after hearing the truth about the vampires and Jim's unwitting involvement, Sylvia refuses to believe it and leaves the house in a cab alone. However, Jim promises Ephraim, Nora, and Satrakian to help them. Satrakian gives Jim a silver knife for his protection and asks him to describe the German he had met earlier. After Jim describes the man to Satrakian, he recognizes it's Eichorst. Using Jim as bait, Ephraim, Nora, and Satrakian make a plan to approach the master by setting up a meeting between Eichorst and Jim, saying Jim has not disposed the pilot's body yet and needs money in exchange for it. However, since Jim is too naive and scared, Eichorst, who is obviously way too intelligent, realizes that Satrakian must be behind it. At the train station, Eichorst shows up and threatens Jim to kill him and turn him into a vampire if he doesn't disclose about Satrakian. Ephraim and Nora hide away and keep an eye on them from a distance. When Jim gathers his courage and informs Eichorst that it is a station and that he will be unable to kill in front of so many people, Eichorst departs. Following Eichorst to the subway, F and Nora lose track of him in a construction zone. After Jim tells them that Eichorst is aware of the trap and is looking for Satrakian, they rush back to find the old man. Meanwhile, Satrakian sees Eichorst standing on the platform and boards the train with him. As Eichorst steps off the train, he traps Satrakian to follow him to the platform that was empty. Although Satrakian draws his sword, Eichorst, being swift and strong, grabs Satrakian around the neck and opens his mouth to suck his blood. Just then, Ephraim shoots Eichorst in the leg with the silver bullet, allowing Eichorst to release Satrakian. As a train passes by, Eichorst leaps onto it, holding on with his claws, and warns Satrakian that he'll return again to kill him. Back at Neva's place, Joan's kids ask to go home. Even though Neva warns something is wrong with Joan, Neva's daughter, Sebastian, insists on dropping the kids home. After Neva and her daughter pull up to the Luss house, they find Joan's husband half dead on the floor. As Sebastian observes him, Joan emerges from the shadows and attacks them. Unfortunately, Sebastian is stung by Joan as she strikes Joan's tentacle with her bare hand. Despite the setback, they manage to run and lock themselves inside the wine cellar. After a while, Joan and a vampire neighbor break the door glasses and come after them. As Joan is about to feed on her daughter, a mysterious man shoots a metal stake into her head, killing her. When Neva and her daughter along with the kids emerge from the wine cellar, they see a vampire-like man in a black Death Squad uniform. He has 4 acquaintances with him who apparently kill other vampires. The lead vampire gently looks over the children to make sure they aren't injured. When he looks at the scratch on Sebastian's hand, he stops her but lets the others go. He then lifts up his crossbow and fires a stake through Sebastian's head. Back at the train station, Ephraim, Nora and Jim help Satrakian to get up off the subway platform. Satrakian explains to the others that the shot on Eichorst's leg will definitely send a message to the Master. Moreover, they realize that the tunnels and other similar dark areas are perfect habitats for the vampires. On the other hand, sunlight kills them. Since it's night, they decide to simulate the sunlight by using UV lights. Soon, they drive to a pharmacy warehouse, but find it closed. However, they break in to steal the UV lights. Inside the warehouse, they encounter Vasily, who is also there to pick the UV lights and use them against the vampires. When Vasily finds out that Ephraim and his associates are there for the same mission, he hands them half of the UV lights he has and joins them to kill the vampires. In the next scene, while Ephraim, Nora and Jim head to a convenience store to load up on some supplies, Satrakian and Vasily stay outside. In the store, Dutch Velders, the hacker responsible for the internet and phone outages, shares with a friend about her involvement in the technological issues. As Dutch has caused the hacking, she is about to flee from New York after buying some supplies for herself. Outside the store, when several vampires appear, Satrakian confronts them and beheads them with his silver sword. Vasily also joins in on the act, and together, the two eliminate the creatures. However, more vampires keep on approaching. As Ephraim, Nora, Vasily, and Satrakian try to fight the vampires and defend themselves, Jim goes inside the convenience store to plug in the UV lights. Though Jim panics, he charges the UV lights and makes his way outside in time to burn one of the vampires with the lights. Unfortunately, another vampire gets close and knocks Jim down, giving him a scratch on his cheek. Ephraim and the others take Jim inside the station while the vampires continue approaching. Immediately, Jim goes to the bathroom and washes his wound. In the garage, Satrakian explains to Vasily that the brain stem of the vampires must be destroyed using silver. Hearing this, Dutch freaks out and questions Vasily if the creatures are really vampires. Back in the convenience store, Ephraim tries to convince everyone to pitch in, but Dutch's friend Nikki freaks out, unlocks the door and runs despite everyone's objections. Luckily, she's able to dash and dodge her way through the vampires. Since the vampires don't follow Nikki, Ephraim realizes that they are here for Satrakian and his associates. Meanwhile, the bread truck driver and Dutch are also ready to make a run to his truck, but Satrakian warns them that the vampires thrive on division and conflict, and that they must cooperate. However, Dutch and the driver ignore him and head for the door. Unfortunately, the truck driver gets attacked before he makes it to his truck. Fortunately, Ephraim saves Dutch, takes her inside the store and announces that everyone will leave the store together. Since Satrakian claims that the master, who looks through the eyes of his servants, will send more vampires, they should act quickly and get their way out of the store. Hearing Satrakian, Vasily decides to buy a lottery ticket from the store's clerk Hassan, figuring his luck can't get worse. Meanwhile, Nora is alarmed when she suddenly notices Jim's cut on his face and finds it unusual. She holds a UV light to his face and finds a worm gliding beneath the skin. Immediately, Ephraim and Nora rush to cut Jim's wound and take the worm out while Vasily notices the vampires on the roof. Ephraim cuts Jim's cheek and waits as the worm makes its way to the opening. Following this, he removes the worm, burns it with the UV light and stitches up Jim's cut. Just then, the vampires start breaking through the front glass doors using tools. Seeing this, Jim uses the UV light, and Satrakian shoots one with a nail gun. When Satrakian and the others go outdoors, they realize something is wrong as they discover a vampire climbing a pole. In no time, the store loses power. Since the garage is surrounded by the vampires, Satrakian declares that the bread truck is their only hope. They collect alcohol bottles, buckets and rags. While Jim wallows in regret and thankfulness, Ephraim prepares Molotov cocktails. As the duo is conversing, Ephraim notices another worm slide across Jim's face. Immediately, they pull up Jim's shirt to reveal several worms covering his entire body. Although Ephraim tries to convince Jim they can take him to a hospital and treat him, Jim asks them to kill him. Since Jim doesn't want to turn into a vampire and go after his loved ones, he wants his misery to end right away. Soon, Satrakian draws his sword, but Ephraim stops him. However, Vasily steps in and grabs the gun with silver bullets from Ephraim's pocket and shoots Jim in the head. Devastated by his friend's death, Ephraim attacks Vasily while Nora cries over Jim's body, and Satrakian says a prayer for him. Suddenly, the noises in the roof get louder as more vampires approach. Hence, the group makes their way outside, but Hassan, The store's clerk refuses to go with them. Outside, they gather in a circle, holding up the UV lights and hurling alcohol bottles towards the vampires. Vasily heads for the gas pumps and borrows Ephraim's credit card. He enters Ephraim's zip code and then waits for authorization. Upon approval, Vasily fills up the buckets with the gas as they proceed to the bread truck. Ephraim takes the truck's keys from the pocket of the truck driver, who is about to transition after being attacked by the vampires. When Ephraim sees the driver is still alive and groaning in pain, he shoots him in the head. As everyone jumps into the bread truck, Vasily throws a final round of flaming bottles at the vampires and gets inside the truck. The episode ends as the group escapes from the place. Subscribe to see more videos like this, turn on the notifications, and leave a like to help the channel grow. Don't forget to watch part 3. Thanks for watching.